As a permaculturist, Mark is an advocate of no-dig gardening, or indeed no-dig agriculture, which is all about maintaining soil life without causing disturbance to the delicate ecosystem that has developed beneath the surface. Mark, for example, doesn't believe in hacking up the soil to get rid of weeds. Instead, the weeds themselves would be used for the nutrient and biomass benefits to the topsoil, which, in his words, is all about mimicking the ecosystem of a healthy forest floor.
So what does it mean to grow your own soil?
When we talk about growing soil, we're actually talking about, humus. We're talking about nutrient that is then made available to feed plants. Whereas, you're actually, when you're fertilizing, you're not actually sort of feeding the plant. You've got to grow the soil first for the soil to be able then to release the nutrients to the plant through its root system. So what we're talking about is actually growing soil. We're making soil, organically, like compost. It's just like a little mini composting system. Instead of doing it on a big 1.5 metre pile, you're doing it on like a 6-inch layer level, across the ground. So it's again just like a system of introducing, nitrogen, introducing carbon, introducing water, and then allowing all nature to get in there quick and start to break it down. So it's always, you're looking at your carbon nitrogen ratios and trying to introduce biota to do the job that they love to do. Eat fungus, make fungus. For instance, for growing like vegetables here, you really need tropical garden building techniques, because you can't really successfully grow Western so-called vegetables or Asian greens on 2 inches of topsoil on sand, because you've got a lot of nutrient loss just through the rainfall. Most vegetables are gross feeders and like to have a lot of nutrient to go through their full development stage. So what we're doing here is we're implementing tropical garden bed designs, which include no-dig gardens. So therefore we actually build layers above the sand. So we put, for instance, cardboard on the sand layer first, so therefore we're helping to avoid the loss of nutrient and organic matter when we get our tropical downpours, and so that sort of seals the bottom. And then we start to put like vegetable matter from the kitchens, the old fish carcasses, etc. like that, which is high in nutrient, the fish oils. And then we will then put in compost that we make here and mix that with the soil that already exists to build up organic matter, because what happens within soils of this nature is they're very high in alkalinity. For instance, testing here was anywhere between 8 and 10.
Wow.
And for vegetable growth, you want a neutral pH.
Yeah.
So without going and buying man-made chemicals to lower the pH, we use organic methods, so therefore organic matter will drop your pH. So that's why we're introducing as much organic matter as possible. So therefore then we're just doing layer, and then in the end we use the green mulching from the canopy and put that on top, and then we've got our sort of cake of soil making, which we've created on top of a flat island.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Oh my gosh, so you can pretty much grow actually anything, anywhere really, if you by using sustainable methods.
If you've got sun, water, and seed, and a bit of know-how, it's all possible.
Yeah. What do you do when you have weeds growing? How do you deal with those?
Well, weeds are your friends, really. So, because the weeds are like the scarifiers of the earth. For instance, when you cut yourself, a scab forms on your skin.
Yeah.
And that's what weeds are doing. When there's bare soil, they're trying to repair the soil. So the weeds are very important, and not to just pull up and take away, because they're actually mining for minerals and nutrients to repair that top level. So when you have weeds, the best thing to do is either to slash them, to drop them on the spot, and then you can put newspaper or cardboard on top of it to occlude the light, and then they'll break down as well, like making a compost again.
Yeah.
So with no-dig gardening, you're sort of incorporating another technique called sheet mulching.
Yeah.
So where that sort of enables you to sort of use the weeds that are growing there, but it prevents them from growing again. And because you're layering, you know, your nitrogen and your carbon and you're building soil again, it's just part of the mix. So whenever you see a weed, you normally just either pull it out and throw it under the under the mulch, and it'll just break down.
And if you have a vineyard and there's lots of sort of, you know, weeds growing near the vines, and so would you advise people to actually just cut it and leave it there?
To cut it and leave it there, but then also to like sheet mulch, because you don't want the weeds to always be, you know, coming up, particularly if they've gone to seed, because if they've gone to seed you'll get a replication, you know, a reproduction of the weed. So therefore, if they have gone to seed or not, if you cut it and drop it and then laid cardboard or put a thick layer of mulch like up to say 4 inches on top of that, that will help prevent the weeds coming. With mulching, it's any organic matter that's really available to you that you can get in some quantities. And for instance, it can be, you know, spoiled hay, like from farmers when they're, you know, producing hay, and they may get wet, and so therefore it's no longer usable for animal feed.
Yeah.
So that's always a good one if you're in a rural area.
Yeah.
And so, you know, lucens, etc. like that. Also, for instance, in the past I've grown, and we're growing here, is a lot of lemongrass. That's because it's brilliant because it doesn't go to seed. So if you're trying to think about mulching materials, try to think of materials that don't have seed in them, because then you've got that weed proliferation.
Yeah.
So for instance, lemongrass, cannas, native gingers, are also very good.
Lemongrass.
Yeah, and we can use this here as a natural mulch. So once all the lemongrass grows, we just chop and drop it straight where it is, so we don't have to then start wheelbarrowing mulch back into this area.
All these,
yeah, all the different bugs and that now starting to get in and do their job.
The right mulch naturally introduces biota to the soil.
Because as you can see, like, if you look down here, this is coconut peat, but it doesn't really break down. And, you know, you can see that it's, you know, takes forever. And whereas, you know, using, you know, more the wood chip in that, you're starting to introduce more microorganisms and animal life. Whereas as you can see there's nothing.
Yeah, it's rock hard as well.
Yeah. When you've actually got living ground covers, you know, you've got your precipitation from rain, but also you've got your dew. It actually traps and keeps the moisture in the ground. So yeah, it's not competing with your major
like the vines, for example.
With the vines, for instance, it actually helps to trap moisture in the ground to allow more moisture for your vines when they need it. Because
so it's I guess it's about a fine balance. Like if you're farming in a hot place, you want to have a fine balance between, you know, the right cover crop, so it helps with the moisture, rather than letting. And
also it's preventing, you know, evaporation.
Yeah.
You know, which is one of the highest problems is, you know, your evaporation, because in a lot of the parts of the world now your precipitation is lower than your evaporation. So therefore, how do we sort of, and this is where you come into your water harvesting techniques and no irrigation vineyards. And so by implementing these water harvesting techniques such as, you know, living mulches and living ground covers, you're actually fulfilling that water harvesting technique. So when you do get rain, you're giving us every opportunity to trap the water into the soil. For instance, if you know, do a 3 to 4 inch layer of mulch, 1 square metre will absorb something like 30 to 40 gallons of water.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's why mulching is very important.
Oh, it's like a big sponge.
Yeah, exactly. That's all it is. It's a big sponge cake. And the water goes in and is being held and kept on the soil. When you're thinking about mulching, if you think about what the product that your mulching needs, for instance, like if it needs nitrogen, grow nitrogen legumes, you know, your chickpeas, your clovers, your millets, things like that, that you can actually, you know, grow on site as well. So mulch is any organic matter that you can get large quantities of, that you can throw on top of your garden beds, and I always, recommend at least 3 to 4 inches thick, because you don't want to be going and doing it every second week. And if you think you've got enough mulch on, I always say put a little bit more, because then you've definitely got enough.
Yeah.
Because you want that moisture retention, you want that aerobic activity, and so because eventually it breaks down, you're making soil again. That's what you're doing. Mulching is making soil. So this is the jungle cuttings from the canopy, which has 95% of all the nutrient, and so that's, you can feel it.
It's still very hot. Yeah.
Because it's still green, and so this is that's about how much thickness you put down as your mulch layer. So you've got a good sort of 3 to 4 inches. And you can feel the moisture in there as well.
And you can put it just like that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of raw. That coarse,
yes,
and it gets broken down.
Yeah, it breaks down. Because you think of the jungle, trees fall over, they break down once the fungi gets in, and the microorganisms, and everything starts to. It's carbon.
There's a lot of winemakers, when you say to them, "Well, why did you start organic viticulture or biodynamic viticulture and so on?" And they say, I've had a few people say to me, it's because when they do the pruning and the vine cuttings fall on the ground, they notice that actually it's there the year after and the year after, and that it doesn't break down.
Right.
And so they started wondering actually why is the cutting not breaking down and going away.
Yeah.
And now that they are, they've noticed that by being, organic, biodynamic, or
introducing
whatever,
the microbes.
And then within a year, it's
breaking down.
It goes away.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is, really makes you think, because a lot of people actually will take that away,
and burn it, and then put carbon into the air. Whereas this is our life saviour, and that's what we're meant to be storing.
So you don't believe in ploughing? Like if you had a vineyard, would you plough?
Not necessarily. It would depend on at what stage. Like if you're setting up, for instance, yeoman's ploughs. I don't know if you're familiar with PJ Yeoman. It's like a deep-rooted ploughing system that goes down into the soil, and it has like a spade effect where it can actually aerate the soil below, but it doesn't actually uplift and turn.
Okay.
So you're not changing the structure, you're just allowing more air into the soil, and there's also seed pods on top, so you can drop seed down through the fingers of the ploughs, and then you can start to grow up. So that's, it's for uncompacting, compacted soil, but in a more, sensitive way. For instance, also, if you're starting on compacted soil, daikon radish, by throwing radishes down, they, deep-rooted radish will break down the clay and allow oxygen and water to penetrate. So there is, certain times that you'll, use these systems depending on the soil. So never say never. It's just trying to find a method that is more empathetic towards the soil structure to get the best advantage out of it.
Because otherwise what you do is you disrupt this sort of very fine balance of your topsoil.
Exactly. And depending on where you are too, like for instance in the tropics like here, we have very small topsoil layer, so therefore you don't want to be doing deep tillaging and disrupting that, because it takes so long to repair it, and you're just actually destroying the the organic life and forms that are within that layer. So that's where no-dig gardening techniques, sheet mulching, is all advisable to keep the nutrient available to the plants that are available.